Hey, what's going on, guys? It is your host with the most, Underdone Toaster, coming live. I am joined by my host, C. Buckner, for episode 18 of the Social Eclipse Podcast. Buck, how you doing today?
I'm doing okay. It's been a rough day. But there's some good things. There's some. I just realized just now that last time we had a podcast, I mentioned, man, it's been a while. I think it's been like 2 weeks, which is a pretty long drought for us nowadays. But I think at the last one, I was like, hey, I'm working on my channel. I've got some videos cooking, and here we are. Fast forward just 2 weeks later, and I think I've got like 4 or 5 videos that are up there. So yeah, it hasn't been all bad.
Yeah, so they've been fairly successful too, from what I could tell. Especially your shorts.
Yeah, I think the latest one is my best.
Yeah,
it's true. Yeah, the shorts pop off, and I'm aware that the algorithm favors those, so that's not like anything insane. But from the research I've done, it is kind of like a cool thing. Like, it's not super common to get. I think every single one of my shorts has crossed the 1,000 line, and that happens just every so often for some people. So yeah, I got to be grateful for that. And my long form ones, my most recent one hit like, I think 100 views in like the first 6 hours, which was like my best performing video. So it's been fun. I like doing it. I like reading the comments. Some of them I script, some of them I don't, and I've enjoyed the process. So yeah, it's all good.
Nice. I also have a short YouTube update. I will be releasing an apology video fairly soon about the lack of content, as well as the future of the channel. So stay tuned for that. But yeah, good.
I think this is not your first apology. This might be like third or something.
It's definitely not my first, but I can guarantee it'll be my last.
Yeah. Every big YouTuber has to have some sort of apology video, so you're ahead of the curve.
That's true. Also, one other update, or I guess question for the viewers, is we are considering covering different topics on our podcast, such as politics. If you guys would like us, and it would still be philosophical, but it'd be covering things like gun control or abortion or gerrymandering, all those different things that are often debated. And Buck and I, we've talked politics plenty in the past. We're both fairly centrist. So just let us know in the comments below if you want us to cover some more political side of things in terms of philosophy and what's going on in American culture today. But today we are covering a interesting topic that I think can have a lot of different viewpoints on, and that is, does every generation of humans get weaker? So there's a few things we're gonna have to define, but ultimately the reason we came up with this is because there's stereotypical looking back in history and looking at men especially, and you think of them as like lumberjacks, making their own cabins, hunting their own food, big jacked guys with beards. And then maybe you look at people today and you're like, hey, this guy's whining like a baby because his phone isn't working correctly, or there's too many YouTube ads. And you could say the same thing about women with different things. But that's why we came up with it, and I think it'll be
no elaboration on the women.
Yeah. Well, we'll get to it. I better think about what I say before I say it. So I don't want to get myself in any hot water.
Yeah.
So, I guess the first question is, what should we define as weaker?
Yeah, that's true. Are we going like, is there a correlation between like, have we gotten weaker or has life gotten easier? Because I think it could be a different direction. I'm not opposed to going in that direction, but do you think that's valid?
Oh yeah, definitely. I think that's a huge part of the conversation.
Okay.
Yeah, I think we should definitely cover that. So,
Okay.
talking about being weak in general, there's physical strength, like mental resilience, maybe like social strength in certain aspects. So, yeah, we have to define whether all these things are just a perceived decline or if they're actually something able to be measured, right? Because we've all, like I just said, we've all seen movies, or we all have this picture in our head of people back then who were large and strong, constantly doing manual labor. But at the same time, looking at it from a physical aspect, they also didn't have the nutrition that we have these days. They didn't have the medical benefits that we have these days, or the advances in the sciences. So even if we do think that back then, like, they had more muscle, perhaps they were still weaker because infection was a thing, mortality rate was higher.
People died faster. You live a lot longer nowadays.
Right. So, yeah, I think definition of weaker is a really good starting point for us.
Yeah, either that or maybe this concept, this philosophical concept, has multiple answers depending on which route you do. So maybe there's not just one way of looking at it, but like maybe we could attack each different, like physicality, mentality, and then social. I'm not sure. And then maybe at the end we could come together and based on the tally decide.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if that's the way to approach it, but I think that's one way we could do it.
Sounds like a good idea to me. So already talking about physical strength. I mean, bringing up the points I just did, what are your thoughts? Would you say that people these days are physically stronger or weaker than? Well, we're going over every generation, so I guess we can even just compare them to like boomers that were our age.
Yeah, that's interesting. My mind tends to go weaker nowadays than it used to be on physical, and like I said, I'm gonna bring this up instantly because I think it'll apply to most of the categories. But I think in general, life is easier now than it was. I mean, not always. We've talked about like loneliness and social media and everything, but technology is like, the purpose of technology is to make things easier, right? Like that's the whole point. Is that our lives will be easier. Our machines do things for us. We used to wash dishes in America, and now nobody washes most of the dishes. You used to do laundry by hand. Now nobody does laundry by hand. So I think it'll be pretty hard to argue that life hasn't gotten easier because of technology, especially in the last 100 years, with the Industrial Revolution and advancements in like cell phones and all these machines and everything. So, but I think that applies in a lot of areas, especially physicality. I feel like we don't have to do as much work just as a whole. So yeah, I think that plays a big part in are we physically stronger than someone like, just say, even 100 years ago? I'm sure there's data we can look up, but top of my head says no.
Yeah, maybe it's like a bell curve where you have people who use gym equipment these days and like really go hard, and so they're going to be in the top 10%, really jacked. But then you also look at, especially Americans, and there's a huge obesity problem, and people, I mean, I guess depending on how you look at strength, I would generally say that people who are obese are weaker than your average human. And that would be like your bottom 10%. And maybe if you think about boomers, it seems like they were all so similar in stature and size. And again, maybe that's because I'm looking at the lens through movies, of which I've seen, but we know that obesity rates have climbed and climbed and climbed over the last few decades. So, yeah, maybe instead of thinking that everyone's in a certain category, it's just recognizing that, like, these days there's so much more variety than there used to be, that's another hard thing to determine in physicality of strength.
Yeah, it is hard to determine, but I think you have to be more intentional nowadays if you want to be strong. Obviously, that's not always the case. You know, if you're a farmer, I mean, are you intentionally getting strong? Probably not. It's just that's what you do. Like, that's your job. That's your livelihood. But by and large, I think that most people who want to, like, gain muscle go out of their way, like, for that very purpose. It's not a byproduct or a side effect of their lifestyle. At least here in America, you know, our culture is just kind of built for comfort nowadays, and I'm not sure. I don't know about the boomers. If you go that far back, that could definitely be true. But my mind's going like 100 years ago, 150 years ago, like the 1800s, where your lifestyle was way more dependent on physicality than it is now. I mean, with the rise of, like, sitting behind a desk, you know, a lot of office jobs started popping up. When did you say that was like a thing? Like in the 50s and the 60s, maybe?
Yeah, probably 60s.
That's probably
70s.
A big difference. Yeah, I mean, that made a big difference, I think, when we're sitting. I'm not talking about like social media or screens necessarily, but we can have that conversation. But I mean, just like sitting down. I mean, a lot of jobs now are just sitting down behind a computer screen as opposed to like manual labor. I think there's a lot less jobs that could be considered manual labor. So,
yeah, no, it definitely goes back to your point about life just overall being easier. It's like you said, we just don't need to use physical strength nearly as much as we used to due to machines and computers and cars. You know, all these different things we have are just making our. I mean, I would argue that mentally, and we're going to get to this soon. Mentally, we are thinking a lot more and using our brains a lot more than they did back then. But yeah, physically, I would definitely say we are not using our bodies nearly as much, especially in things like our workplace, as we used to. So, yeah.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, is there maybe a correlation between how weak humanity is? Can you measure that based on, maybe this might be a stretch, but can you measure that based on how much we idolize like the perfect figure? Like physical form, you know what I mean? Maybe we idolize that now more nowadays, like achieving the perfect body now than we did 200 years ago because more people had it, right? So is that a good measuring stick? But kind of a counterpoint to that is like you go back 2,000 years ago to like the Roman and Greek Empire where they had these literal idols, like statues of these people who were absolutely ripped. You know what I mean? Like they really, back then they idolized like the perfect human figure. Does that mean maybe they were lazier back then as well? Maybe that was a rare form, you know? Maybe that's why they idolized it. I don't know. I had that thought. Do you think there's something to that?
Well, if I remember correctly, back then, to be fat was like a good thing. It was a sign of wealth. Am I wrong?
I don't know that, but
maybe I'm thinking more of like.
I'm just thinking.
Maybe I'm thinking more of like kings than like 100 years ago.
But it still could hold up kind of because like we like to think 2,000 years ago they weren't as advanced as us, and that's certainly true. But like think of like the Roman Empire at its height. Like that was one of the most advanced civilizations of all time. I mean, even compared to today, they didn't have cell phones, but they were like extremely advanced, like in technology and architecture and lifestyle. And there was certainly comfort, you know, if you lived in Rome back then. So maybe there's some sort of correlation between like idolizing that perfect figure. Maybe they got more comfortable, and so they really idolize the Olympians and the gladiators and these big warriors, because it's possible that most of the population did not look that way, and so you could argue that they were weaker.
Yeah, that's a great point, because I was thinking that these days we idolize the perfect body way more than back then. But I suppose if you bring up an example such as the Romans and the gladiators, like, you're right. You probably saw the gladiators who were really strong, great in combat, and you probably like, man, I wish I was as ripped as that guy. But at the same time, I feel like your physical strength wasn't, or not your physical strength, but your figure wasn't as much in the limelight as it is these days, because they had so many other issues that they were dealing with back then. But these days, I feel like with social media especially, and the I don't want to say lack of problems, because we do have problems. They're just different than the Romans did. But I feel like our body images are much higher on the scale of importance than it would have been back then.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. And I think that's a cultural thing, like you said, it's not that we have less problems, but, you could argue that is true. We have less problems. Our problems aren't as, substantial, I guess, aren't as much substance as they had. That's a different topic for a different day, I guess. But yeah, the cultures are just different, especially like us growing up. And it's not even like TikTok and everything. I remember when we were kids, I talked about this in one of my videos. I don't remember when Facebook was just coming out. Do you remember this? Like, we were in middle school and whatnot, and like everybody wanted to have like a Facebook account, right? Because it was like cool. But at the same time, I remember reading all these articles like, be careful, like, don't give your kids social media too young, because they'll start comparing themselves, like, especially girls. Like, I remember it was a big thing for girls. Like, don't give your young girls social media, because all they'll do is compare it and whatever. And even way back then, like 2008, 2010 or whatever it was, like, they were talking about that, and they were right, really. So it's just, it's like different culturally. We have to deal with different things. And I guess we might be kind of getting off topic here, but like, I don't know if that's a sign that we're weaker, mentally, physically, because we idolize each other. We idolize that perfect figure. We idolize people who are stronger. I'm not sure, but it's an interesting point to make, that they even, throughout time, we've always idolized this like perfect figure. We've idolized being strong physically.
Right. And it makes sense biologically,
because
yeah, and biologically it makes sense, because if you're healthy, then that means you're going to be able to live longer and reproduce, and obviously we all want to live longer, so it makes sense that even probably as far back as you can go, if humans have a large enough prefrontal cortex to recognize their own bodies, then they would want to be as fit and healthy as possible. So it makes sense.
Yeah, but I don't know if it's a survival thing. Like, for us, it's not. I mean, you think when people look on social media like, oh, I want a body like that, it's not so I can survive longer. It's so I can appear, like hotter, or I can appear like more respectable. And I guess it's kind of always been like that kind of. I mean, you're right, but you think the Greeks kind of idolized, the perfect godly image because of survivability? I don't know. I didn't live back then, but I feel like it might have been the same. Like, they wanted to appeal more attractive.
Yeah, you're probably right. Maybe for all of civilized human history, it has been like that, where you want to be physically fit more so for social status and like attracting a mate than survivability. Yeah. So that's a good point.
I don't know. Yeah, is that weakness? Is that desire a sign of weakness?
I'd say it's a sign that you're maybe unsure of yourself, and that could be a little weak.
True.
To,
True.
maybe to close up the physical aspect of weakness. Buck, question for you: if a modern take your average 30-year-old male these days and have them fight an average 30-year-old peasant from medieval times, who wins?
30-year-old from modern age fighting a peasant from medieval age is what you're saying?
Yeah.
Probably the peasant. Man, there you go, folks. Thanks for tuning in today.
No, the reason I bring that up, I think what we're coming down to is, yes, in terms of longevity and health. Well, I don't know. Great. Now I'm second guessing myself again. Okay, longevity. We definitely live longer nowadays than we did back then. But maybe that's because like vaccines and antibiotics more so than health, because I guarantee that heart disease and diabetes are way more common these days than they were back then. So, shoot.
It seems like it all kind of evens out somehow, I mean, and I'll even argue, you say that nutrition's way better now, and that's kind of true, especially like with healthcare and everything, but like, I don't know, man, like part of me thinks they were eating way better. Maybe not like caveman times, but like, I don't know, like 300 years ago, Renaissance. This might just be like hocus pocus in the media, but like it does seem like maybe they ate better. Like if you could afford it.
A lot more veggies than we do.
Yeah, there's no McDonald's back in Shakespeare's time, right? So
yeah, no processed food.
Yeah,
no plastic in your testes.
Yeah, that's right.
Dang. Okay, so that what I was gonna say was that back then they were like physically stronger in terms of muscle mass, but they were like weaker in terms of overall health. But now I'm starting to change my mind. Now I'm starting to think that back then they were just healthier both ways, and the only reason we do have better statistics is because of like medicine, not our actual bodies.
Well, I guess this is a good segue. We could go into mentally, because I'm starting to think that it was more of a mental thing back in the old days. Like that's like maybe they weren't as physically strong like overall, but like they made up for it in mentality. You talk about like the peasants, like back then they were certainly peasants and they probably didn't eat great, but they were resilient. They had mental fortitude and they got things done.
Yeah, I would
maybe therein lies their health.
I would say that, and this is just off the top of my head, I have no evidence to back this up, but I would say that back then they had a lot more street smarts than nowadays, where we have a lot more book smarts. Nowadays you can talk to anyone on the street and they might have a bachelor's degree or a master's or something higher and know a ton about a specific subject because that's their job. That's literally how they make a living. They do it all day, every day. But then you ask them something really simple like, hey, who was the second president of the United States? Or, give them a really simple math formula, and a lot of the time they can't do it. But I feel like, going back in generations, there was so much that you had to do yourself that, you couldn't just look everything up on the internet, that you did have to know a lot in order to not only survive, but thrive.
I would actually, I want to agree with you, but I also kind of disagree. I think there's two portions of this, and let's see if I can eloquently put this in the best way possible. I think peasants were stupider back then. They were dumber, like just kind of like the stereotypical, like in a movie, like peasants are stupid, like just give me food, like I'm a peasant. I think to an extent that was true, but I think it's because education wasn't available, and so yeah, it's true that like we have a lot more education nowadays, but I'll be honest, man, I'm not sure if we're like smarter in general. You see those videos, and they're definitely edited to make them look extra dumb, but you see those videos of like, they go on the street and they're like, name 10 countries, and they can't do it. I genuinely think like there's a lot of those people out there, and maybe it's like the readiness and the accessibility of education is maybe that's not always a good thing. Maybe it's like we've become dumber because we're, I don't know, like desensitized to all of it. I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Do you kind of get what I'm getting at though? Like
Yeah,
back then you had to
like
be smart if you wanted to survive, right? Like maybe not in the peasants like medieval times. I mean, you could kind of just be stupid and get away with it because you were a peasant. But like, I don't know. I feel like in a lot of eras, because there were no education, there was no formal education. You had to go out of your way to be smarter. You're kind of right, like street smarts. You had to learn things yourself, and you had to like seek out opportunities to learn. And so maybe in that way they were smarter. Whereas nowadays, if you want to learn, I mean, it's handed to you. Just chat GPT it, and that's not really learning, is it?
right. Yeah, I would say that there's a difference between just like knowledge and intelligence, right? Knowledge is
Yeah, right.
memorization, doing something over and over, learning a lot about a singular topic. But intelligence is like knowing how to apply yourself or knowing how to take these topics and put them to work. You know, it's or just, you know, you've taken IQ tests before. It's not who was the president of the United States in such and such year. It's like, hey, do this puzzle or think about this little riddle, things like that. So, yeah,
Yeah.
I would definitely agree with you that maybe it's because these days we have so much information constantly thrown at us that we do become
Yeah.
desensitized to it and we just like don't really care about it unless it is going to directly benefit us. And I
Yeah.
hate to I hate to say this, dude,
Go ahead.
but I have watched dozens of documentaries on YouTube about a variety of topics. And if you were if you were to like look up one of them that I watched and ask me like three simple questions, I probably couldn't answer all three. I
Yeah.
could probably answer like one or two.
Dude. Yeah, I'm not saying, you know what the perfect case study or example of this is? You know, when they told us like, hey, like I guess you and I are old enough that we had to use like real calculators like in school. I don't even know if they do that nowadays, to be honest with you. Like, do they use, we weren't even allowed to use phones. We had to get, what was the name of those like calculators? They had like T80 something or whatever.
Yeah, the
And we had to, it was
TX whatever.
required. Yeah, whatever. We had to get those. We couldn't use our phone, and we definitely couldn't look things up. I don't know how it works with ChatGPT nowadays, and how they, keep kids from like cheating on math homework with ChatGPT. Like, I don't even understand that, but like, I think that's a perfect example of like, you know, the metaphor would go like 500 years ago. It's like them using their brain and having to do math and having to stack like these two numbers. Okay, you have to carry the one and this. And nowadays, you just ChatGPT, what's this plus this, right? And you'll get the same answer, right? We have all that information right at our fingertips, and that's great. But like when it comes to actually applying these things, and okay, why is that the answer? You know what I mean? How does that actually work? Uh, I think we're losing that, not just in math. That's just an example. I think with everything, we've got answers at our fingertips, but we don't know how to apply them. We don't know how to, we don't know why they're important. So in that aspect, I think over time, not even just with the internet, I just think over time we get dumber when we have these tools that make things easier, and we get more reliant on them too.
Right, because
Dependent.
if you have the internet at your fingertips, like why bother memorizing anything? Why
Yeah,
bother learning
yeah.
anything? Because if you're asked a question or you need to know something, then just pull up ChatGPT and boom, it's the path of least resistance is what it is. We are lazy as humans,
That's
and that's
right.
just the truth of it.
That's right. Dude, there's levels to it too. I mean, even when you and I were in school, I remember you and I, we would even say this, like we're doing our math homework, and we'd be like, why do I have to do this? Like, I just pull out a calculator. And I
Hey,
remember, I think it was you that told me, like, you were like, darn well that when I get a job when I grow up, I'm going to have a calculator. Why do I have to show my work? And I was like, yeah, you're right. And little did we know, we've got like AI now.
Yeah.
But it's that. That's exactly what it is. I mean, it's always been that way, right? There's always easier ways to do this. And it's like, why do I bother? You know, if when it really comes down to it, I could just use these tools. And that's absolutely right. But it really is making them dumber, which is very strange, you know? Like what do we do about it and why? Why is easier equal dumber? So that's absolutely how it works.
Hey, I don't even know if this is in the realm of philosophy, but another good podcast topic to cover another day would be like, what do we currently cover in school? And I'm talking about like elementary school, middle school, high school, and what should we be covering instead? Because I mean, you're so right that that's what I did in math class. But to be fair to myself back then, like I haven't used any of that junk except for like basic algebra all my life. We were right.
Oh yeah, I mean you are right. We were absolutely right, and I think that's kind of that's the problem. That's the problem with society, you know.
Yeah, I'm gonna write that down so we can cover it at another point. But so we've talked about intelligence a little bit and knowledge, but taking another viewpoint of like mental resilience. I know we've talked about mental health a little bit in a past podcast, so I don't want to cover it too deeply. But I do feel like older generations look at younger generations as weaker because there's more mental health issues, more higher rates of depression, higher rates of anxiety. And one question that we should at least briefly cover is that because we're weaker, or is it because we're like more aware of how depressing the world actually is?
Wow, that's almost another video or another podcast.
It is. It's
But
sorry, it's a big question.
It's a heavy question.
Big question.
That is a big question, yeah, to unload. I think it's probably case by case. I think it could be either one of those. I'm not sure which one is more than the other, but I would think you have an argument both ways.
Yeah,
I think it definitely comes with age. You know, like being more aware of how things work, and that can be depressing. Certainly, I feel like that's how it's been in my life. You know, like the more I kind of figure out. I don't know how I word this, but like the more you kind of realize how difficult life is, the more insurmountable it seems. Not that it is insurmountable and there's no solution, but like ignorance is bliss. You know what I mean?
Right.
And the older you get, and the more you have to figure out, the more you realize that you have to overcome, the harder that kind of weighs on you. So.
Yeah, I definitely think the awareness is a huge part of it because, and it's interesting how our topics always come back to the internet, but it's a huge part of our lives. You know, if I think back to before there were newspapers, even I'm not even gonna say like the actual news on the TV. I'll even say newspapers. The only thing you were really worried about were you, your family, and your community. Right? You didn't care what was going on the other side of the world. You weren't worried about what climate change was going to do in 50 years. You were worried about today and tomorrow, and that was just about it. So nowadays, when we're getting all these different news sources coming at us, and they're, you know, I would say that they're 80, 90% negative, you know, telling us about wars or telling us about the next election coming up in 4 years or climate change. It really is just like, it has to have a deep, deep impact on us in terms of how we actually view the world.
Yeah, I agree with that. I think before the internet, you're right. It was like, not that we were more selfish, but like more focused on our own problems. I mean, like it or not, a lot of our anxieties comes with things we can't even control. And that sucks because it's like, what do we do about it? We can't do anything about it. And, I really, and this is certainly nostalgia, but I really think there is something to like reminiscing about the 90s and the 2000s when we had the internet, but it wasn't quite as big of there weren't as many ramifications. Social media quite wasn't there. So that, we've talked plenty about what that does to people, and it's not all bad, but there's certainly bad in there. And all this negative media certainly existed back then. So I don't know if that would have helped, but things were different. And I imagine it must have been nice to have the internet, have a tool like that at your fingertips. But yeah, you also had you had a social life, and kids would go outside and do this. And, my life I was much more worried about, you're right, like today and tomorrow. And I feel like nowadays we've kind of lost that. And I don't think it's completely because of the internet, but over time, I feel like that's monetized. People like to monetize, be worried about everything, Right. Now that you have all this information, I'm going to monetize how much you should be worried about this information. And it really does sell. People love to read that. I don't know why. I'm not sure why that sells so much, but I guess that's another topic.
Yeah. So from looking at it from that standpoint, I would definitely say that we're more fragile because we have that awareness that maybe they didn't back then. But also looking at mental health in particular, I would also argue that we just have more education and openness about mental health than they did back then. And something that really stinks is they didn't widely study or keep track of, depression rates or anxiety rates until like the 80s or 90s. It really wasn't a thing before that, just because it just wasn't something that was studied. It was more so ignored or frowned upon. So it's hard to answer the question of if mental illness rates are higher these days or if they're the same as they used to be and we are just more educated about it and aware of it.
Kind of. I'm going to add an extra layer, and the reason I'm going to step in here is almost to kind of plug my next video. Maybe by the time you guys, I don't know if it'll be my next, but it's been planned. I've scripted it. One of my upcoming videos is going to be kind of about mental health, and I do want to make videos about mental health. That's something that's kind of been important to me lately, and it's something I want to talk about because I feel like nobody talks about it. But one of the topics of my upcoming videos is kind of making a point that while we do talk about it more and it seems we're more educated more, as with any topic, I feel like that's a double-edged sword. I feel like because we talk about it more, sometimes there's more pushback. And the reason there's more pushback is people don't agree. Mental health is kind of still seen as taboo, believe it or not. I feel like people don't want to talk about it, or they brush it off as, it's like people are trying to get attention. So they don't take it seriously. I think that's a real problem. So yeah, it's true that like we talk about it more, but like with that also comes with pushback and I guess dissent is the word I'm looking for.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I mean, even looking at myself just maybe like 5 or 10 years ago, I know that my outlook on mental illness was much, much more different than it is these days. And I think that's partially because I've developed relationships with people who have mental health problems, and I've become more educated on the subject. I've taken a few classes. And so because of that, I can kind of see where the boomers are coming from when they frown upon it. But at the same time, like, I'm really glad that it is becoming, I mean, like you said, it's not super out there yet, but I do feel like we're taking baby steps in talking about it and, like tackling it as an actual issue, because it is a huge issue, especially in the US right now. And it's a shame that it's not taken more seriously.
Yeah, it is. And one thing I'm kind of spoiling my video, but I don't care. You can go watch it anyway. But another thing I talk about in there is one of the scary things about that is, yeah, we're making baby steps, but some of the people who are pushing back on mental health, and not even just people pushing back, but like the reason, like the ways in which mental health, it's hard to access resources to help with mental health. One of the reasons that's a thing is, in my opinion, the fact that people are scared to come forward, and talk about it, because it is such a hard thing to talk about, like to be vulnerable and admit that you need help, whether that's mental health or not. Like that's a very difficult thing to do. So I'm not sure if the cause is weakness, you would say, like, is somebody weak because they're struggling with something they can't control or they can control? That's a very nuanced topic, and it's very case by case. It's hard to say by and large whether that's a sign of weakness.
Yeah. Well,
yeah.
I think we hit a lot of good points there. So maybe we can move on to social and moral strength. So,
yeah.
I mean, this is a philosophy podcast after all, so I guess the question is, are we more morally strong now than we were in previous generations? How would we measure something like that?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to measure mental health as well. I mean, so I'm not sure how you'd really measure any of these, to be honest with you. But you just mean as a whole, like statistics and data and like trends? Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, I'm just like trying to picture your average human these days and what their moral code is, and then compare it to, when a boomer was a teenager, or 100 years ago, or 1,000 years ago. I'm honestly not sure if our moral code has changed all that much over time.
Yeah, I mean, what would change somebody's moral code? I mean, not like an individual, but like a society as a whole. Like, what kind of big events would change it? Because I don't think more information, like we talk about the internet, I don't think more access to more information. Well, maybe it would change, more perspective would change somebody's moral code. So maybe I'm wrong about that, but you're right. It's difficult to measure because you have to find a cause or some sort of event.
Yeah, I suppose there's spread of religions throughout time, but even those are, take hold of a civilization for like thousands of years at a time. So I don't know if we could even use that as a measurement.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I guess you could look over time, and there's been a more democracy over time, I guess. So maybe that's like, you can argue morality there and how more people have more choices, and we're not just 3 monarchies across the globe anymore. I guess maybe that has something to do with morality and social outlook. I don't know.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll sit on that a little bit and talk about social strength first. I think that this is the easiest answer out of all of them. I would say that we are socially weaker these days than we were in previous generations. Just again, coming back to the internet, social media, all those fun things have destroyed our generation.
I actually I'm gonna play the devil's advocate. I don't necessarily disagree, but I think you're kind of comparing us to maybe the boomers, and in which case I would agree. Like socially, we've weakened ourselves, but I think if you go back further to more ancient civilizations, I think people were more disconnected. Possibly. I mean, I think we should talk about that. But like, how often do you think peasants actually like talk to each other, unless it was business or whatever? I don't know. Maybe this is my perspective from movies, but I feel like people like kind of kept to themselves until, I don't know, more like 100 years when, the Industrial Revolution and more of these, more countries and everything. I think the by itself, like if you live in a monarchy, you kind of you keep to your own. Am I wrong? Like, am I totally wrong here?
So whenever I think about like pilgrims and peasants and anyone before the internet, I always think that the internet takes up so much of our lives these days that back then there just wasn't anything to do but converse with other people and develop relationships.
Oh, true.
Right. I know that dancing used to be a huge thing back then. Feasting used to be a big thing back then. I mean, if you're doing nothing, especially when it gets dark at 6 o'clock and you don't have light bulbs yet, it's like, what else are you going to do but sit around and talk to each other and play games? That's the way that I
share stories. Yeah, that's an excellent point. I agree 100%. It's like they're entertaining each other, right?
Right. Yeah.
What else are you gonna do? Yeah. It's a good point. I think you just finished that argument.
Yeah, and
so socially we suck.
Yeah, I would say that socially we suck these days.
Podcast. And socially we suck. Yeah.
Yeah, we have gone through the eclipse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that one's pretty straightforward. In terms of how to fix it, that's one of the largest questions of our day, so good luck to anyone who wants to answer that.
Okay, yeah. I think we should go back just briefly, because I think this is a big thing, but like going back on like mental health and like, because I'm not sure if it's, I don't know the exact statistics, but from what I hear, I feel like the cultural zeitgeist is that anxiety is getting worse. I mean, what do you think? Like, do you think that's a sign that we're getting weaker? Because I almost feel like the answer to that is kind of the answer overall.
Right. Yeah, it's I guess it has a lot to do with the cause of these things, right? Because if you say that you have major depression disorder or anxiety disorder and it was more of like a genetic thing, then I feel like that's a different conversation than talking about someone who, grew up in school and was bullied and compares himself to others all the time. It's like, how much do we actually have control over? If it's mental illness that we didn't really have much to do with acquiring, then I feel like that doesn't determine our strength whatsoever. But if it's something that we acquire because we're in this constant loop of mistakes and putting ourselves down, then I feel like maybe that is a form of weakness.
Okay, well, let me ask a philosophical question within a philosophical question.
Ooh.
That maybe we should have asked this question at the very beginning of the podcast. I apologize, I did not think of it. But is weakness, like, I feel like based on what you just said, you're defining weakness as something somebody can control. So let's say mental health decline is real. Let's say it's really happening. And let's say it's not to the fault of people who are mentally ill, but rather the fault of society or external factors that make it so. You could say, okay, well, it's weakness. Like, we are weaker. However, it's not their fault. But I feel like based on what you just said, you wouldn't agree with that because by your definition, weakness is a choice. So is weakness a choice, or is it just a byproduct of, like a result? That's how we're reacting to our circumstances, whether we like it or not.
Yeah, that's a great question. One good example that comes to mind immediately is, I'm going to space on the name of the movie. Do you remember that movie where an American soldier gets captured by the Japanese in World War II? Oh, Unbreakable. You've seen Unbreakable, right?
Unbroken.
Sorry.
Unbreakable. Unbreaking is the strong guy, or Unbreakable is a really strong guy.
Is that Bruce Willis?
Unbroken. Yeah, Bruce Willis.
Yeah. Sorry. Unbroken.
Unbroken. Yeah.
I love the movie Unbroken because as time goes on, like he starts out as this really fit American soldier, and he's captured, malnourished, weakened. But towards the end of the movie, there's this scene where one of the Japanese captains is basically pointing a gun at him. He's saying, "Hey, hold this log over your head, and if you drop it, I'm going to shoot you and kill you." And this American soldier, although he's physically really weak and dehydrated, and it looks like he's going to drop it, like his pure willpower is able to bring him through, and he's able to like dominate this Japanese captain, not physically, but just through like confidence and willpower and like his desire to live. You can just see the Japanese captain be like completely obliterated. His stupid little face is like, "Oh no." I mean, I love that moment.
I haven't seen the movie. I've read the book though, so I know exactly what you're talking about, but I have not seen it.
It's a great movie.
You're kind of making me want to watch it.
Yeah, you'll have to check it out. It's one of my favorites. But anyway, the reason I bring that up is because I feel like even when life makes us really weak, I'm choking up. I'm just kidding.
Okay.
I'm just kidding. I'm not choking up. But I feel like even when life hits us really hard,
I was ready to cry.
we're gonna get deep here, Buck. We're about to get really deep and motivational. Okay. Even when life puts you down, you got to get back up. You know what I mean? You gotta look life in the eye and say, "Screw you, pal. I'm gonna keep going."
Yeah.
And that's because it's my choice, and that's what strength is, brother. Amen.
Okay, but you kind of went against your previous.
Shut up.
No. This is important. But listen. Okay, so you take that example. You take this same guy, and I apologize for anyone who hasn't seen the movie. I guess this is kind of hard to visualize, but hopefully we gave you a mental image here. So I feel like you would have two people reacting to this. The first one says, okay, he's not weak. You know, he despite his circumstances, he lifted the thing, you know, he overcame, blah, 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 blah. He's not weak, right? Look at the guy. Like, he's stronger than anyone. He's not weak. But I feel like on the flip side of it, you could say, okay, he is weak. I mean, look at him. This happened, but he overcame his weakness. You see the difference there? He overcame his weakness. And so there's two definitions. The weakness that you can't control, and it's your circumstances. It's what happens to you. And doesn't mean you can't overcome it. It just means, you know, weakness is what happens to you. Or is weakness the decision of, you know.
We're getting deep in this episode. We're making layers.
No. Like for real. Like the second person would say that, okay, he is weak. Like even at the end of the movie, he is still weak, right? Because of circumstances he can't control. Or for the first guy, he'd be like, okay, he's no longer weak because he overcame it. I think that sounds like, why does it matter? You know, he overcame it. But I think the definition is important here, because based on the definition, I would even say, you know, if you were to argue that weakness is not a choice, but you can still overcome it, then yeah, I would say we become weaker as a society. If you see this downtrend or uptrend of anxiety, right? And this mental health is like, so many people are having these problems. Yeah, it's weakness, but it's like, it's not their fault. It's just that they're victim of circumstance. But if you define it as, hey, weakness can be overcome, and then it's no longer weakness, then that's a totally different way of seeing things. And I guess that would be a totally different answer.
Yeah. No, I'd agree. So, I certainly think that there are different definitions of weakness, and like you just said,
I don't know if there's different definitions. Which one is it?
I
don't think it's one or the other, though. I think we have to make the decision.
You're making me sweat here, Buck. I like this. I like this a lot.
No. I don't want to get off the hook on this one. I mean, if we want to go viral and we want to be the next big podcast,
change the topic.
We can't be
I'm too weak.
He's too weak. No. We got to answer. This is what the viewers are here for. These are the philosophical hard questions.
Okay. All right. I'll give my answer, and then you can give me yours, Buck.
Okay.
Here's my answer. Weakness is understanding that you don't have full control over your circumstances, but deciding to move forward in a positive direction regardless.
Okay, so would you say that the soldier in the movie was weak, but the moment he decided to overcome it, he is no longer weak, is basically what you're saying?
I would say he was strong the entire time.
Despite his weakness? So he was never weak.
Despite his physical weakness. That was weak.
Was he weak?
His body was weak, but his spirit was strong.
No. You have to say overall, because, like, I agree with you, man. But like, when we have the title of this episode is humanity weak?
Fine.
By your definition, we have to split it into, like,
he was strong.
His physical was, but all right, you got to give an overall answer.
Okay, my final answer is that the man from Unbroken was strong throughout the duration of the movie.
There was no weakness.
Well, I'm not going to say there's no weakness, but if you're saying was he weak or strong, I'm going to say strong.
Okay, I see. No, I apologize. I'm trying to label you. I'm trying to back you into one corner, choose one thing when it's a nuanced thing. I apologize.
That's what philosophy is. It's backing it into a corner and choosing a single answer.
That's true. We should be doing this every episode, making each other uncomfortable, I think. Yeah.
Now you answer, Buck.
No. Now you got to take your answer first and apply it to the greater question here, because I think you kind of answered the question for yourself. No.
Okay. So what's the question?
Now that you've decided that the man was never weak in the first place, am I saying that right, or am I misrepresenting you?
No, you're correct.
Okay. Because you said that, would you also say that if the fact is that anxiety is going up and we're on an uptrend of anxiety, the defining factor of whether we're weak or not is whether those people can overcome their anxiety? It's not solely that there is more anxiety, it's the fact, can they overcome it or do they not? Is that what you're saying? It's more dependent on choice.
Yes, I concur.
Okay.
Your turn.
Oh, I agree. Yeah. I'm going to take the easy way.
You're going to agree? Okay.
No, yeah. Like, I'd love to for you to back me into a corner, but I agree with you.
Okay. Yeah.
Yeah.
I think that's a good way to pin it down because, yeah, looking at mental health, it's always going to come down to the individual.
Yeah.
But yeah, looking at these days, I would say that mental health illness is rampant, and perhaps the reason it's like that is because we just don't really have the tools to tackle it besides, shoving it way deep inside of us and acting like it's not there. Maybe that's one reason why it's so bad these days.
Yeah, which in itself is circumstance, right? Like these people can they want to overcome it, but I mean, I'm not saying this is the case for everybody, but like there's a lot of people that do want to overcome it, and it just seems like the resources are not there, and so It's kind of hard to pin that on weakness, in my opinion, just overall.
Yeah.
Yeah. Which kind of complicates the answer, because then it goes like we can't just look at the trend of anxiety and say, oh, that's weakness. because based on our definition, you have to go a lot deeper. And it's like, okay, where are the resources? Are there resources available, and are people taking them? Are they choosing to take them? Or it's a lot harder to define now.
Yeah, it's a pretty deep rabbit hole, but I think we're starting to scratch the surface. We're 1 hour in, and we're just now starting to scratch the surface.
Stay tuned to part 2 next week.
Ooh, part 2.
Where we answer the question for good. And not only that, but we come up with solutions for the government, for all governments.
That'll be some nice clickbait.
That's right. And by part 3 next year, there will be no more weakness.
Yeah, we're going to solve
it.
We're going to solve weakness. We're going to be stronger than the boomers ever were.
That's right.
Okay, so we are at an hour. I think we've covered at least the main points: physical, mental, social, strength, and weakness over time. To wrap up, I have a question at least, and then if you have anything else, feel free to jump in. But my question to kind of wrap up is, isn't it just me, or doesn't this happen like every generation where it's like kids these days? Isn't it just like, didn't Gen X say that, or didn't boomers say that about Gen X, and then Gen X said that about millennials, and now millennials are saying that about Gen Z?
Dude, no, you and I, we're not even 30 yet, and I think we're starting to say it about the new kids.
I say it all the time about Generation Alpha. What a bunch of weaklings.
Is that what they are now? It's Alpha?
Yeah, Eden and Sammy are Gen Alpha. I'm kind of jealous.
Wow, scary, way scary. I don't know. Maybe therein is the answer. Maybe generations are getting weaker.
Maybe it's all just an illusion, and it's just something that the older generation constantly says to make themselves feel better.
I think there might be something to that. Which is pretty sad for those of us who are on the giving end of it, But such is life, It's jealousy is what it is.
Yeah, I mean,
I
think
it's not as much weakness as jealousy. If every generation gets more jealous, we inherit the jealousy. We inherit the jealousy. Crazy.
Yeah, and I think a big part of it, honestly, is just nostalgia. Like, we all have, our childhoods were different than the boomers' childhoods. But if you ask them and us who had the better childhood, honestly, I feel like I had a great childhood. It was way different than what they probably did. I played a lot more video games and watched a lot more movies, that's for sure. But at the same time, maybe it's more about what brought us happiness in our youth, and that constant reflection defines how we perceive younger generations. Kids these days, they're not doing what I did anymore. They're doing this new stuff, which I don't understand, so I'm going to term it as weird and unnatural. Like TikTok dances.
Are you telling me you want to be a TikToker?
No, sir. I'm just saying I don't understand them.
Oh, it's the other one. Oh, I see. No, I guess it's like they say, you ever hear people, do your parents ever say, love is wasted on the youth, when you wouldn't go on a date or something?
Yeah.
Maybe it's the other way around. They're not jealous of they want to be doing, maybe they don't like what we're doing, and it's like, man, I wish I could go back and do things better than what you're doing now, because I miss being in your shoes and having that decision. I think you might be right. Yeah.
Oh yeah.
So
they're jealous of our vitality.
That's true. That is true. But I don't know. But before we go, we have to kind of answer the question, do we not? Or don't we? Do we leave it open-ended? Are we getting weaker overall? Yes or no, do you think?
Well, that depends, Buck. You're talking about physical, mental, or social strength.
That's true. I guess I dug my own grave when I said let's split it up, didn't I?
I think we covered a lot of good stuff, though. That was good that we went over those individual subtopics.
It was. I'm noticing a trend with our podcast. We love to compare past humanity to present humanity. So in a way, we're doing we are like a what's a word? It's like a
boomer.
What's the word? No. It's like it's a localized version of a bigger problem. I forget the word, but yeah, I'll think of it when I'm in the shower tonight. But we're doing exactly what you just said. Things were better back in my day. Like, it seems like you and I are always talking about, oh, back in that day, they believed this, and we don't believe that anymore. And you're right, we talk a lot about the internet. So I don't know what that says about our podcast. So that's my question. It's a bit of a different question today, but leave in the comments, what does that say about us? We're always talking about past versus present. I want you to diagnose us in the comments.
That'll be our philosophy topic next week for our podcast. Why does our podcast cover that? Yeah.
Oh, okay. Yeah, it's a little bit different. Yeah. That's great.
All right. Awesome. Well, great conversation. I think we hit a lot of good points. Of course, just as always in philosophy, there is no simple answer, but we do want to hear your guys' thoughts below. Let us know in the comments. Also, go check out Z Buckner's channel, link in the description, and check out our sponsor, Skittles, at skittles.com. Use code WEEK for 20% off.
Yeah.
And
week. Not week like with 2 E's, with 1 A.
That's right.
Or else you're not going to get that discount. Sorry.
Yeah, make sure you get that discount. All right, guys. Thanks so much for listening, and we'll catch you guys in next week's episode.
Yeah, see ya.